Welcome to the Last Drop Business Podcast, where we have the privilege of interviewing successful business owners who have maintained their sobriety. These entrepreneurs have achieved great success while staying sober, inspiring all of us to overcome challenges and to achieve our goals. So whether you're someone who is in recovery, an entrepreneur, or just someone looking for stories of hope, The Last Drop is your source of inspiration, motivation, and empowerment in the business place. I'm your host, Timo, and please join us as we celebrate The Last Drop, the moment where everything changes and the real journey begins. All right, welcome to the Last Drop Business Podcast, where we celebrate the incredible journey of individuals who have embraced a sober lifestyle and have found strength, resilience, and purpose in that process. I am your host, Tim O'Connor, and in today's episode, we have James Martin, a brand designer from London, England, who is responsible for designing timeless brand identities and creating a very fantastic platform for graphic designers all over the world to learn the skills they need to be successful in a growing space, known as Made by James on social media. James, welcome to the Last Drop Podcast.
Hey, bud, you know what I like most about coming and doing these podcasts and stuff like that is the variations in intros that I get, and they get better and better. That was a particularly good one, so thanks for that.
Yeah, you're from London, right? I didn't just...
But it's like everywhere in the UK is close to London, do you know what I mean? I'm kind of not really in London, but I am close enough to London to say London. I'm kind of more on the south coast of the UK.
Sure.
But like I said, it's a 2-hour drive to London. That's kind of like a walk to the shops for you lot over there, isn't it? So, yeah, pretty yeah, let's just
so
say
close
London.
To London.
Let's just say London. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, thank you so much for jumping on here today. I really appreciate it. So we'll just jump right into it if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to lead. You go, you talk, I'll listen, I'll answer. We'll riff from there, Perfect. I reckon.
Yeah, man, that sounds great. All right. So the first question. So why did you get into your profession? Why did you get into graphic design?
Great question. Why did I get into graphic design? I think I was always arty as a kid. I was always more creative than classically intelligent. Do you know what I mean? Art and creativity was always a space or a classroom that I felt comfortable in. But I kind of almost fell into graphic design, I suppose. I was actually kicked out, long story short. I've talked about it a lot, but, to kind of give you some background, I was, sexually abused at the age of 11 at school and then rebelled during my teens, drugs, alcohol, stealing, kicked out of home at 17, kicked out of school at 17, moved away, did shitloads of drugs, drank a lot, didn't do anything particularly good with my life for a long time. And then, like I was talking about how I felt comfortable within the art space or within the classroom of art when I was a younger boy, it's kind of the only thing I had at that time when I was very, very, very lost. Art was the one thing I trusted, I suppose. And I went and did an art foundation at the local college, and it was basically the reason I started to try and educate myself again after a few years of doing pretty much every naughty thing on the planet that one little boy could do. I needed a distraction away from that. I knew I needed a change. I knew I needed something in my life that took me out of that particular group that I was in. And yeah, like I said, art was that. Art foundation then led me on to like a kind of graphic design national diploma. And then from there, I then went and did a communication studies degree. And even then, I wasn't really I never thought that, 20 years later, I'd be speaking to you about my career in design. It was more like a distraction at the beginning, but
Yeah.
then I just carried on. So I suppose to answer your question, what got me into design, it was to distract myself from being a twat. That's probably what it is, I reckon.
That's a great answer. That's great.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, dude, I totally relate. Totally relate. It is like art is definitely and was always like the safe space, you know, like it was something that I feel like I could get, you know, even when I was in college, it was like I could go to the studio and whatever I was feeling that day, whether I was high or drunk or whatever it was, I could get it out. And, you know, during my early creative years, I used substances to fuel my creativity, you know, and it like to a point it worked. But at that same point, I look back on some of the stuff, even that I did in college, you know, 10, 15 years ago. And I was like, wow, this could be like so much better, you know, if I would have been in the right mind and I could have expanded on this a lot more. And it's kind of like a little bit of a bummer looking back on my education days. And like, I feel like that's why I try to expand my education more today, is because I feel like I kind of ruined it when I was in college, like getting jacked up every day, every night, and not having like the 100% full potential of my brain to like understand like, oh, this is how you really can do something and understand it. And like, yeah, I got the fundamentals, whatever, but still I feel like the drugs and alcohol really hindered my experience in college and creatively and same with early profession as well. And, you know, do you feel like drugs or alcohol helped you with your creativity during those times, or like, you know, before you got sober?
It's funny. I wrote down something then while you were talking, which was because people say to me now, like, how can you be creative? How do you come up with ideas now you're sober? How do you do this now you're sober? And I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't have a fucking clue how I did it when I was fucking drunk all the time, or I was, you know, fucking high on drugs all the time. Do you know what I mean? So, like, yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I don't feel like the drugs and the alcohol were ever catalysts for creativity for me. They were more something I used to hide away from reality, something I used to hide away from trauma, something I used to hide away from the person that I was. I don't think I was a particularly nice person for a long time, and I think it's an easy thing to hide behind. Is probably trying to mask a lot of the emotion that I was struggling with and a lot of the trauma I was struggling with. So, like, obviously, you know, when you're doing a load of shrooms and you're drawing, it's a fun thing to do. And, you know, when even up until recently, but like 10 years ago, me and my wife would get drunk and read tattoo magazines and then draw all night. And it was just something that we did. Do you know what I mean? And especially in the UK, with alcohol, it's very cultural. Do you know what I mean? You work hard during the week and then you get drunk on the weekend. That's like, and you know, you drink from very early on in life. And like my parents drank a lot. Don't drink so much now, which is nice. But it's kind of like a very cultural thing over here. Like the kind of we binge drink. Do you know what I mean? We drink to get drunk. We don't social. Yeah. Well, I'm generalizing a lot here, but as a culture, is very much drink to get
it's
drunk.
It's like
on
America
the weekend.
Too, you know.
Yeah. But for example, like you learn to drive before you drink. We learn to drink and we learn to drive at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So we're allowed to. Yeah, but which is
two
really
good skills to have, you know.
Yeah, but it's really fucking dangerous, isn't it? And then you wonder why there's so many.
It is dangerous.
Like, you know, it's
so fucking dangerous.
It's so fucking dangerous. But yeah, it's mad. So yeah, to answer your question, like for me, it was never particularly anything to do with. You know, it never made me more creative. If anything, it made me more lazy, I suppose.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, man. I agree. I agree. It's kind of like, yeah, even in the beginning of my career as a graphic designer, like there were so many times to where I'd be sitting at my desk and I'd have Photoshop open back in, 2011 or whatever. And I'm
Mm.
designing for a motorcycle dealership that I was working at. And I was literally just like, I remember one day I was so hungover and I was like, dude, I cannot think. Like, I cannot do my work right now because I am in such a bad like space mentally. And so me and my coworkers went out to lunch and drank a couple beers, and I came back and I just hammered it out, and it's crazy because I look back and it's almost hard to look at that work. It's almost
Mm.
hard to look at the work that I did when I knew that, like, wow, this is what my work looks like when I'm like under some sort of influence. And when it started moving on to the harder stuff, it was very, it was brutal, man. And it was just like, yeah, it was terrible. And I felt like, because my ego was so broken over the idea of like, I want to be this great designer in Colorado and I want to do all this stuff, I felt like that was hindering my like wanting to not use. And so I used more because I was like, my emotions are over here. And in order to take care of them, I have to use and I have to feel better about myself. And then that would give me a, couple hour window to get some work done, and then it'd go right back to the bullshit. So like, it's
Mm.
just like the ever going circle, man. And it's just the ongoing just like cycle of emotion, substance use, emotion, substance use. And it was brutal. But like, what events led you to drinking and using substances? I know you said you were sexually assaulted as a kid, and I mean, I
Mm.
can totally relate. I mean, when I was younger, I had some shit like that happen to me as well, and that definitely like fucked me up for a while. And
Yeah.
it's like I was so ashamed about it. And it was, would you say it was mainly that trauma that led you to use, or was it more? Was it other stuff?
Yeah, it's difficult to, I mean, I don't know if I would have done the same thing without the trauma. It's impossible to kind of go back and
Totally.
assess it like that. I have no idea. But
Mhm.
I can say that, like now, having dealt with it, having a lot of counselling and realising it wasn't my fault. I'm a 40-year-old man now, so this is
Yeah.
almost 30 years ago. As like growing up as a
Wow.
teenage
Mhm.
boy, who was embarrassed and ashamed, didn't tell anybody. I dealt with it by myself for a very, very long time, up until, my very late teens, which is when I started telling people. And then there's the,
Mm.
do people believe me or not, and all that kind of stress that goes with it. And
Yeah.
ultimately I ended up having to
Yeah.
ended up having to go. So I basically, what happened was I went back and taught at my old school for a year, and he wasn't the chap that did it to me wasn't actually working at the school anymore. But I was speaking to
Mm.
one of the teachers and told him what happened, and then within the next few days the police were round, and then within what felt like a couple of months that we're in court, like on trial. He was on trial
Damn,
because
dude.
I found out that there were like many, many, many more kids that he had done
More?
it to over the
Wow, dude.
decade since we had done about 8 or 9 years since he had done it to me. And I don't know whether I was the first or
Yeah.
not, but he had continued to do it. So there was always that guilt in me of like, maybe if I had said something earlier, it wouldn't have happened to all these other people. And I
Oh,
think,
yeah, man.
yeah, a lot of
Hmm.
dealing with that led me to drink. And I think, like I say, also growing up and wanting to experiment as a teenage boy, adolescent, that,
Yeah. Yeah.
started off with a little bit of weed, and then that escalated into pills,
Always.
mushrooms, LSD,
Hmm.
cocaine, speed, name it, I've pretty much done it. Acid, all sorts. And it just kind of like
Yeah.
one
Same.
thing led to the next thing, led to the next thing, led to the next thing, led to the next thing. And obviously alcohol was always a
Mm-hmm.
part of that journey as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, for me it was, I mean, I suppose if I tried to overthink it, I could possibly say that was a catalyst for maybe me going off the rails, feeling very lonely, going through that trauma, wanting to block everything out, squelch it all down and not talk
Yes.
about it and just forget about it. And drugs and alcohol were a great vice for that. But I'm also not going to sit here and
Totally.
say that was the reason, because I might have done it all anyway. I don't know. It might just be in my character. I don't know.
Yeah.
I might just be a natural addict.
Totally. I feel
Now
that.
I'm addicted to work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, if it's
Yeah.
not, if there's always some sort of addiction that's always kind of gone for. I've been very,
Mhm.
like, I call it drive now. So it sounds slightly better, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Oh,
But
hell yeah, it does.
yeah. So that's kind of, yeah. So as I say, I wouldn't like to pinpoint it or place it on a certain thing, but it possibly had something to do with it
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I can totally relate. Me too. It was the part of that, like, yeah, shame, and then also, yeah, going through, being a teenager and then the 20s, and definitely, I mean, here in America, going through college, it was like, I remember there was a time to where it was like, if you weren't partying, you weren't cool, and like, I went into college and I was a skateboarder and a punk. Yeah, peer pressure, right? And it was like, I was a part of these kind of like this subculture, and my friends and my roommates like rode dirt bikes, and we were all just like a bunch of hoodlums. And like, at one point we had like a half pipe in our front yard, and the cops would always come, and like they weren't arresting us. They were just like, damn, this is the fucking coolest house on the block or whatever. And I just remember that there was that stigma of like, if I wasn't drinking and doing drugs every weekend, or starting on a Wednesday, even sometimes a Monday, and it was just like a full week thing, that it was just like, it was a part of life. It was a lifestyle, and it was like, today I'm grateful, because like, sobriety is becoming now such a recognized thing of like, it's okay to be sober. And now I guess a lot of kids that are like Gen Z are starting to think that it's cool to be sober, and it's like almost trendy now, which is kind of mind blowing in my, experience. Cause like back in the day, it was always like, dude, if you were sober, you were a fucking square,
Yeah.
And that's like one of the reasons why I didn't get sober in the beginning. Cause I was like, I could have so much fun doing all these things, and all that did was end up putting me in jail multiple times, ruining my life, ruining my body, and getting me to a point where I was like, basically homeless and jobless. And it all started with just like partying, and that partying just like was the ultimate downfall for me, for sure. And so, like,
yeah, and that's
how do you think when you were, oh yeah, go for it.
So I was just going to say, like, environment, isn't it? The environment is so important. Do you know what I mean? With reference to like the people you hang around with, the environment that surrounds the things is. And that's what I've found. That's what I had to do, and what I've had to do in my journeys of stopping certain things is remove myself from people and remove myself from environments to be able to tackle it. Because, it's almost like now I'm out of that. It's easier to say no and move forward. Whereas if I was still in it, it'd be very difficult to do that.
Yes. Yeah. Had to remove yourself for sure. Yes, I feel that, man. Totally. So when you started getting into graphic design professionally, and you were using still, how did using affect your career at the time?
I mean, time management was. I mean, like creativity. Creativity is like a muscle, isn't it? Ultimately, it needs to be trained, and it needs to be nurtured. Yes. And obviously, what I was doing was, if I was staying up late or not going to sleep, that would then affect my creativity the next day. So things would take a huge amount of time, much longer than they should have ever done. Like the sunshine, especially somebody in the UK that doesn't see the sunshine very much. In the summer, it would get to a point, especially with alcohol. Like if the sun was out, I would finish early and I would get drunk because I wanted to go and like even if I had work to do, I would just think, oh, I'll just get it done tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or I'll just have a longer day tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was really like inefficient with my time, and I've always been pretty driven. I've always been pretty like good with my routine. I've always like it hasn't like kind of necessarily stopped me from like achieving things. Do you know what I mean? Because I've always been very quick at work, and I did always have this thing where I would, you know, I would never try and drink or do any drugs on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I would let loose. And that was always my thing because I had so much to do and I did have a drive to become something. I did want to kind of build something, but I also really enjoyed getting messed up. Do you know what I mean? So it was trying to find this balance between trying to build a business and also try and have as much fun as I physically could. And there was sometimes that balance got out of kilter. Do you know what I mean? And especially like I was always fairly disciplined, you know, until COVID. And COVID, that kind of period where we were like, you couldn't go out, you couldn't do anything. You know, I was still working. I was busier than ever. Then I was also writing a book. But obviously what was going on in the world, it was all fucking crazy. And, you know, you could get alcohol delivered. Do you know what I mean? And like nobody was working.
Yeah.
I was working, but nobody else. Not nobody else was working, but a lot of my friends were getting paid 80% of their wages by the government to just stay at home.
Oh my God.
Everybody was getting drunk. Yeah, it doesn't matter. 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. We can't go anywhere. We can't drive anywhere. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean. I've got nowhere to be. So that escalated my especially my issues with like cocaine and alcohol. That's when it really started to because I could basically get delivery or go and pick it up. Do you know what I mean? Walk. Do you know what I mean? So easy. It's super accessible. And it became almost like to the point where I couldn't go out. Like when COVID stopped, I couldn't kind of go out unless I had something. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't enjoy things unless I had something. And it just kind of all got to, I would say like that is when I was kind of, especially with the alcohol, that was kind of a real, that's when it started to go a little bit mad, because it just didn't matter whether it was a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. It was just, you know, I remember like I'd wake up, there was points where I'd wake up 9 a.m, I'd be mowing the lawn at 10:30 with a margarita. Do you know what I mean? Just like thinking this is the life. Do you know what I mean? Just like, you know, and then I'd be passed out by 3.
The COVID life.
Yeah, exactly. But my wife was watching all of this, and this is when it kind of changed for me. When she said to me, like, you know, I'm scared. You know, we were also going through like struggles with having a baby, and you know, I think that was a real tough time. You know, it took us 8 years to have little Rocco, so dealing with that emotionally, dealing with all the other things that I was dealing with, you know, I just drank my way through it. Do you know what I mean? And snorted a load of cocaine all the way through it. But you know, it's one of those things that I had a lot of fun as well. John, I'm not going to lie. Do you know what I mean? I had so much fucking fun. Do you know what I mean? Some of the shit that I have done in my life, I would never go back. You know, I would never go back there now, but I'd never regret any of it. I mean, there's some stuff like the stealing I would do. Like, there's some bad things that I have done in my life, but do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of it was really fucking fun. Like, really, really fucking fun. Do you know what I mean? So, and the problem is, like, I was just really good at it. I was really good at drinking, and I was really good at doing drugs. Do you know what I mean? If I could get paid to drink and do drugs, I'd be great. Do you know what I mean?
Lifespan, a couple more years, but during the process, it'd be great, you know? And I feel you, man. Like COVID was definitely my downfall too, you know. I was like locked up, not locked up in jail or anything, but I was like, you know, in a trap house in a really bad part of Denver. And that's where I lived during COVID. And I remember at one point it was, yeah, I could literally walk and meet my dealers, and the liquor stores were still open. So I could go walk and get booze. And I would always go to this Target and just get wasted and walk around Target because that was all there was to do. And then go and like hang out in like an abandoned garage, like a parking garage. And it's like that was life during COVID. Was I would wake up, use whatever I could use to make me feel decent during the day, and then go find something to do. And it was just like, it's crazy because a lot of people used COVID as like a time to build something crazy, build a business, build some whatever, you know. And I hear a lot of people talking about how they use COVID as like a time of growth. And, you know, unfortunately, like I was not disciplined enough to sit down and do work. There were multiple times where I was trying to. I was also like into DJing at that time, and like, you know, I was making a little bit of music and trying to do a little bit of design, but like in the end, that didn't matter. Like all that I wanted to do was get high and get drunk. And like COVID was a terrible time for me for sure. And I think it was after that, it was shortly after we started kind of coming out on the other side in 2020 when I, you know, couldn't pay for my rent at a trap house anymore. And I moved in with my parents, and then basically decided like, I have a problem, you know, and I think I definitely, you know, I can't stop using heroin every day. I can't stop using cocaine every day. I can't stop drinking every day. Like I was doing everything I could to try and stop, but I physically and mentally could not. So like, it was hard, man. And I mean, I feel like COVID was kind of the catalyst that also set me over the edge and made me realize like, oh man, this is not good. Like I am not in a good spot. And so, you know, that's when I like decided I needed to get sober, was kind of in, around August, September of 2020. And, you know, like when was your last drop moment? When did you decide you needed to get sober?
Funny, mine September the 5th, 2021.
Hell yeah.
So yeah,
congratulations, man. That's awesome.
After it's funny how you said August, September. There must be like we must have just absolutely spanked it during the summer and just thought, you know what, no more. And that was kind of it. That was kind of it for me. I just remember my wife just saying to me like she was scared. You know, she was scared for me. Not scared of me, just scared. And that is the moment I stopped, when my wife said to me, this is scary now. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
I haven't touched a drop since. Haven't smoked since. I haven't taken any other substances since. So yeah, 2 years and 2 and a bit years, 2 years and a couple of months almost now. And it's amazing how
congrats,
quickly,
man. That's awesome.
Congrats to you. And it's amazing how quickly stuff has not necessarily how quickly stuff has changed, maybe like how quickly stuff is happening now, you know, when with clarity. And you know,
totally.
like I'm never gonna be the sober person who tells his friends they shouldn't drink, or tells their friends to not do drugs, or tells their friends to not do this. I'm never gonna be that guy, because you know what, I would do it again tomorrow if I hadn't had this experience of 2 years being sober, what it's done for me, my happiness, and everything. But I'm never going to preach to anybody about that. But it really has, like for me personally, it really has like allowed me to be very much more present. I'm much more in tune of my emotions. I'm much more in control of my emotions. I don't have any high highs or low lows anymore. It's all very steady and very controlled. And I think that was something that surprised me the most about being sober, was my ability to control myself more. Like, because I would be like super, super angry, or like super, super happy, or the opposite of that. I was never kind of in a like a really, and now I'm just like really generally really happy. Like I can't remember the last time I had a bad
Yeah,
day.
same.
Do you know what I mean? And that is the honest truth. I generally do not know. I wouldn't be able to pin down the last time I had a bad day or felt bad. And that outweighs any because I sometimes dream. I sometimes dream that I'm drinking, and I wake up thinking,
same.
"Oh my god, fucking hell! I've got to start again. I've got to start from one again. I've got to start from naught again and try again." And then I realise that it's only a dream, and I'm like, "Oh fucking hell!"
It was a dream.
Yeah, but I would
using
love to,
dreams are terrifying, dude.
Yeah, exactly, and it has always.
Using dreams are the worst. The worst.
Yeah, they are. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I don't like want to go. Like, there's moments, like even now, where the sun's out. I'm with my wife. We're somewhere nice. Rocco's there, and I think, oh, wouldn't this be like the perfect time just to have a cold beer, or a nice glass of rosé? Or I used to love rosé wine. That used to be my kind of ruin. I used to drink a couple of bottles before I went out. Just because it was a higher percentage than beer, do you know what I mean? So, and I didn't want to get too crazy. And then I'd drink loads of whiskey when I was out. So, but yeah, for me, it was kind of like, it never leaves me. I know I could go back any time, but the problem is, like, there's this idea of like, oh, maybe just one. Why don't you just? Some friends go, "Would you think you'll ever be able to drink again? Do you think you'll be able to ever kind of just have one, like maybe at Rocco's wedding or whatever?" And I'm like, if I have one, I know within a month I'll be back to what I was doing. So it's just not worth it. Just not worth it.
And I totally agree with you on that too. And I think about that often also, is like, it'd be so nice just to have a beer, and recently it's been like, man, I would love to have a cigarette, just because like I used to smoke cigarettes, like, no big deal. And I quit tobacco too when I got clean, because it was just there was a point where I was like so sick when I was detoxing that I just like I couldn't do it. Like, I tried to smoke and I was like, I cannot fucking do this. And I haven't touched a cigarette since then. And now it's like every once in a while I'll be like, yeah, a cigarette would be great, or like, whatever would be, a beer would be nice. And then there've been times where I've been like, God, it'd be great to just like do some harder shit right now. And it's like I hear so many people say that, like, and from the people who I've heard that have relapsed, who have had time and have relapsed, and it's like, it is just as bad when you pick that shit up the first time after you have some time. Pick up one beer, or, you do one bump, or whatever the fuck it is, it's right where you begin, or like right where you left off when you were using. And so like, that is why I always keep it in mind of like, it's such a good reminder when I hear about people relapsing, or hear about, people freshly coming into sobriety, of like, it still sucks out there. Like, I don't want to go back to that. Like, I don't want to go back to spending hundreds of dollars a day trying to like feel better up here, when today, like, if I do a little bit of breath work and a little meditation and do the shit that I need to do to take care of myself, like, everything's normally cool and everything's good, and it's just where I was at the end. Like, I don't want to go back to that shit ever, because it was just the pit of despair. It was fucking terrible.
And it's funny how, it's not funny how at all, like, but it's interesting how it does take that the lowest low. Do you know what I mean? It's not like a random choice that's made at a random point. It's like, for me, and it sounds like the same for you, it was at a point where it was like, literally, like, if I continue this, I die. There's a point, isn't there? Like, I now even feel shit doing this. This doesn't even do the things it used to do years ago. I actually physically feel shit when I'm using or when I'm drinking, but I can't stop myself from doing it. And that was the really, like, looking back on it now, the really interesting thing was that the reason I started was to feel better in moments, or feel better about myself, or forget things and feel better, or feel happier. Do you know what I mean? But when it got to that lowest of
Yeah.
the low of the low, I felt shit about everything. Shit about myself,
Yeah.
shit about life. But I just couldn't stop and it was literally just like that. Just now, no. And that was thanks to my wife. Thank God. So, yeah, it's interesting. You have to get
Yeah.
to that,
It's awesome.
like that point of no return. It's like I carry on and I
Yes.
die, or I stop today. And it was as clear as day for me then, that moment.
That last drop. Gotta get to that last drop, man.
Yeah.
So how did getting sober affect your business, your career? Did it open up doors? Was it better for you?
Yeah, I mean, like we kind of spoke about a little earlier, it's just the clarity, the efficiency. I have a lot, in everything, I'm a lot more level. Like dealing with tough clients is much easier than it was when I was hungover. Do you know what I mean? So, everything's everything's a lot easier. And I feel like I have more time in the day because I'm not wishing half of it away so I could hurry the bit that I was enjoying, which was the mid-afternoon onwards, when I could start drinking or when I could have my first cigarette or when I could have my first line or whatever it was, like I'd wish the day away to get to that point. Whereas now feels like there's so much more time in the day now, which allows me to be really effective and really productive. So, there's not a bad thing that has come out of it, apart from I suppose how I would usually celebrate a winning a big client or celebrate launching a course or celebrate XYZ within the business. Now, celebration is just walking in the woods with nobody around, or you go for a walk around the local common with my child, or just being able to sit and rest and watch a movie with my wife. I don't really go out a lot. I spend a lot of time in my office, but it's funny, because sometimes these kind of moments of celebration. Do you know what I mean? Like hitting your goals and then you celebrate. That would always be the thing for me. If I won a big project, or I just signed off a big project, or completed a big project, it'd always be just got a fucking shit ton of money and let's go fucking spank it on something. Do you know what I mean? So and that was always it.
Yeah, dude, totally.
Now I just buy myself shoes and weird tracksuit bottoms and artwork. Do you know what I mean? For my office. So
dude, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. It is funny. But yeah, so for me, it's just the productivity and the happiness for me and everything. A lot clearer when it comes to my purpose as well now. And, I'll try and give back more and more and more.
Totally. Yeah. So right on, man. Yeah. To kind of wrap things up, what, if you had any advice or any suggestions for people or business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives who are out there trying to battle addiction, alcoholism today, do you have any advice for them struggling with substances? What would some advice be to those people of how they can get help, or what would you say to them if someone came up to you right now and was like, hey, I have a problem with drugs and alcohol, I don't know what I need to do? What would you tell them?
There's probably two things. There's two things that helped me. Talking, communicating, whether that was I got a lot of counselling to try and figure out some deeper shit that I probably hadn't dealt with, to try and find the crux of it. So that would be one thing. I found that opening up and talking to people about how I feel has really helped me understand why I did the things I do, and also highlighted some other ways that I could get through certain stuff. But I also have a lot of friends who come to me who, just want to stop drinking for like 90 days, or want to stop drinking for 30 days, or, want to get a better hold on it or something, for example. And they always ask me what I would do. And the big thing for me, like we kind of talked about, was distraction. I had to replace one thing with something else. And I had to distract myself from drinking by doing something else. If I just sat at home and did nothing, I would have continued drinking. But instead, I decided I distract myself by walking. So rather than on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday when I would go to the pub, I would drive myself to the forest and walk all day. That distraction was like taking myself out of the scenario, changing the environment, changing the people I was hanging around with, distracting myself from those particular moments was a real lifesaver for me, because rather than the distraction being nothing, the distraction was actively doing something else and filling that time with something else. And that allowed me to gain a little bit more control. So yeah, that is what I would say. Totally. Communication and distraction are my two things for sure.
That's awesome. That's great. Right on. Yeah, and I agree, man. I feel like same with me. Those have been the two things that have really helped me out a lot is talking about it, no matter like where I'm at. I gotta have a network of people that I can talk to about the shit that I'm going through, because like just because I get sober doesn't mean life is going to be easy by any fucking means, a lot of things got easier and life got easier after I got a couple of years, but it took time. And during that time, I had to talk about my problems to other people. I had to have like a consistent, schedule of like, hey, I need to go do these things to take care of me. Because if I don't take care of me today, then everything else goes to shit. And I need to be able to take care of myself first before I take care of anyone fucking else. And, like I had to figure out also like how to meditate and how to like sit with my emotions. And part of doing that, it goes back to the communication part of like I had to go talk to people about it, whether it's a counselor or a 12-step group or a network of people who also are sober, whatever. I have to talk about my emotions and what's going on in my head, because I know that if I sit with what's going on up here, it's going to make me want to go out and pick up some dope or go pick up a bottle, and it's going to drive me crazy. And so like for me, the most relief that I've found is when I just open up, talk about the shit that I'm going through. And a lot of times after I talk about it, like freedom, man, like it goes away magically. And then it's like get back in the cycle of, taking care of myself and get back into the cycle of doing that. And today that's what's worked for me for 3 years. And it's like, I keep doing that, and I keep doing this equation every day because I'm like terrified to not do it anymore, because like if I stop doing it, I know what will happen if I stop doing it. So it's just wild, man. This shit is crazy.
Love that. And congratulations on 3 years. Do you know what I mean? As well. That's
thanks, man.
You know what? It's fucking difficult. Do you know what I mean? It's the toughest thing I've ever done. And I know it's probably the toughest thing you've ever done. And that builds character ultimately, and strength and courage. Bravery. So right with you, pal. Right with you.
Definitely. Thanks, man. I appreciate you, man. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to this episode with James Martin. Go check him out on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the social media stuff he is at Made by James, or look up James Martin. Thank you so much, James, again, for jumping on, spending some time with me today, talking about all the awesome stuff that we've talked about. And I once again really appreciate it, man. So I hope to see you again soon. Maybe we'll see you at Into the Woods here this next year, or some other conference in America. But dude, thank you so much. And I can't wait to chat with you again and see you again.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, my friend, and we will see each other next year in the reels for sure. All right.
Cool. Thanks, man. Have a great rest of the day.
Cheers, pal.